Hello there, my name's Scott. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the Steamboy Stormrider 2.1, which I receive directly from the manufacturer at www.steamboy.cz, or CZ if you want to be pedantic. Now, I don't think they actually sell them on that website though, so he has asked me to point out the website address of a reseller, which is www.ati.cz. Okay, before I start, I must point out you receive it free of charge for purpose of conducting a review, but my opinion of the product remains true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, let's go straight ahead and show you what's in the box. Okay, so for me personally, one thing I really like with any sort of product is good quality packaging and for it to come nicely presented. And the Stormrider 2.1's got some really nice little presentation features. Okay, so it comes in this box, and on the front you're going to find a little technical drawing of the Atomiser, then some specifications, and then the serial number. Inside the box, the Atomiser is going to be laid out nicely on what appears to be wood shavings. Then underneath those wood shavings, you're going to find a bag containing some spare O-rings, a set of stickers, and a warranty card / leaflet. And if you read through the warranty, it's got plenty of information there, and it advises you to go along to the website and register your Stormrider 2.1. Or alternatively though, if you've got a smartphone which has an app that can read QR codes, you can actually just scan the QR code and register it that way, which again I thought was just a really nice little touch. Okay, so here I have the Stormrider 2.1, which is a Genesis repairable atomiser. Now in the future I believe there's also going to be a titanium version, but this particular one is mainly made out of stainless steel. On the bottom you're going to find a 510 threading, which means it's going to be compatible with any device that has a 510 atomiser connection, and it has a silver plated brass centre pin, so you should get really good conductivity. Going around the base here you have the engraving saying Steamboy, which is the name of the manufacturer, and also you're going to find your serial number engraved there as well. The tank is made out of machined PMMA acrylic, and as you can see it's not completely straight on both sides. It's actually sort of like a barrel shape, gives it a nice little funky look, and the tank holds around 2.5 millilitres of e-liquid. You then have a brass adjustable airflow control ring. Hopefully you can see there the air hole, which is 1.2 millimetres, and if you want to create a tighter draw you can actually just start to screw this up. It obviously close off the hole, create a tighter draw. If you prefer a looser draw, you can obviously just unscrew the opposite way. Okay, so with the top cap off you can see you have two wick holes, and these are 3 millimetres each. You then have your positive terminal in the middle and then a negative terminal on either side. So in theory you could have a dual coil setup or a U-wick, but then you're left with the slight problem of if the wicks are in those holes, how you're going to fill it out with e-liquid, so it could be a bit of a pain. I'm going to warn you in advance that these heads are tiny and you may have to spend quite a bit of time sort of rummaging through your toolkit in order to try and find an Allen key that's going to fit, or a hex key that's going to fit. So it would have been nice if a little key came with it, to be quite honest. Another thing to point out is that the top cap is screwed into position rather than held in place with O-rings. Now the advantage of that is that it's going to be nice and solid. It's not going to accidentally sort of pop off if you're carrying it around in your pocket. But the slight disadvantage when you have an atomiser where the top cap is screwed into place is that quite often the air hole won't line up directly in front of the wick. And this is quite important if you want to get sort of a decent vapour production. However, on the Stormrider 2.1 I'm pleased to say that the air hole lines up perfectly in front of this wick here. Now if you did have a dual coil setup, obviously it's only got the one air hole, so what you could do is add an O-ring around the top there, and then as you screw the top cap on it meets that O-ring, and you should be able to position the air hole so it's sort of right in between the two wicks without any sort of problems. Okay, so here we have the top cap, and one of my friends described this as rather busy looking, and I can see exactly what they meant, because it is a little bit sort of over the top, but I think combined with the rest of the atomiser it just gives that really nice sort of funky look, something that's a little bit different, and personally I really like it. Has a pretty small chamber in there, so it's going to get a nice sort of warm vape, plenty of flavour, plenty of vapour, etc, etc. You've got your airflow control ring on the side there, so if you like to have a tighter draw you just screw it up. If you prefer a looser draw you just screw it down. Then have the 510 drip tip in the top, and this drip tip does also come included, but if you don't like to use metal drip tips you can put your own ones in there, and every drip tip that I've tried fits in there really nice and snug. Okay, so what I'll do now then is quickly go ahead and show you how I've been getting my one all set up. Okay, so as the Storm Rider 2.1 has quite sort of big wick holes, they're 3mm, I like to use a nice sort of fat wick. And so I made this wick by cutting out a piece of 400 mesh at a width of 50mm by a height of 30mm. I then rolled it up to form a tube, and then I oxidised the wick by holding it into the flame of a blowtorch for around sort of 10 seconds, and that's pretty much all you need to do to oxidise the wick. Now before you insert the mesh, you want to make sure that you're going to be using the wick hole that comes closest to the air hole. So the easiest way to do that is just to put the top cap on fully, take a note of the position of the air hole, put your fingernail next to it or something, then unscrew it, and then just make sure you're going to use the wick hole that is closest to where you marked it off with your fingernail. So I'm going to be using this one here. Okay, so all I've done is just insert the mesh wick through the wick hole there. And then I've just added a syringe. Obviously you don't have to do this, it's just something I do personally. I've added an old syringe needle right down the centre of the wick there. And the reason I do this is just to sort of help strengthen the wick and make it a little bit easier when you're wrapping your coils. Now when it comes down to what sort of wire to use, obviously you can use nichrome, you can use Canthal, it's entirely down to you. For me personally though, I like to use this 0.28 gauge Canthal wire. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is just attach the wire to the negative terminal. So just hold it in place with your thumb, wrap it underneath the terminal screw, and then just tighten it up. And now the wire's attached to the negative terminal, I'm just going to take it, wrap sort of 4 or 5 coils around the wick, and then finish it off by trapping it underneath the terminal screw head here. And then once it's all tightened up, you can just tidy it up and make it look a little bit more presentable. And you should have something that looks a little bit like that. Then to remove the excess pieces of wire, you can use a pair of cutters, but I prefer to just apply a bit of tension, give it a spin, and it will snap off nice and clean. Okay, so at this stage you just want to make sure that all your coils are going to light up evenly and at the same time. And if they don't, then you may have to do what's called the pulse method, and this is where you're just going to sort of tap the button here, and that will just sort of help finish off the oxidisation process and eliminate any little hot spots. Okay, so all I'm going to do is just start pulsing on the switch. And you see I've got a little hot spot around the top there. If I keep on pulsing, eventually that should go away. So I'm just going to give it a little slight nudge just to help it out. And it seems to be fine. Okay, so once all your coils are firing up nice and evenly and at the same time, you can just fill the tank up with whatever e-liquid you're going to be using. So just going to be using the syringe here just to save a little bit of time. And then hopefully the old capillary action will start working. You see it's at the top there already. Give it a fire, we should get some nice vapour. Okay, so all that's left to do now then is to attach the top cap. and that just goes over the top and screws into place. Okay, so that is the Storm Rider 2.1. Let's go ahead, see what it vapes like. Okay, so that was the Storm Rider 2.1, and what I'll do now is go ahead and show in action. So I'm going to be using it on my Nemesis. The battery came off the charger probably around sort of 10 minutes ago. I've been having a bit of a vape, but it's probably still reading around sort of 4 volts, 4.1 volts. According to my ProVary, the resistance of the coil is reading 1.1 ohms, and I've got the tank filled up with some 18mg strength tobacco flavoured e-liquid. It's just a PG e-liquid. Okay, so this is the Storm Rider 2.1. So as you can see, like vapor-wise, you're getting plenty of vapour out of it, but just bear in mind the amount of vapour you're going to get is going to be fairly down to your own sort of personal setup with regards to what sort of resistance you've made the coil, type of e-liquid you're using. Now you may be using a variable voltage or variable wattage device, and it's going to be dependent on what sort of settings you've got it set to, etc, etc. But nevertheless, with the setup I've got here, getting plenty of vapour, flavour and throw hit. The warmth of the vapour is definitely a really nice warm vape. If you're into your cooler vapes, it's probably one to avoid like the play, because it does produce a very nice warm vapour. If I was going to say that 1 was a cool vape, 5 was a hot vape, it's definitely probably around sort of 4, maybe sort of 4.5, something like that. Just a really nice warm vape. The draw on it is obviously adjustable, so if you prefer to have a tighter draw, you can just give the old ring a little spin up. If you prefer a looser draw, you can spin it back down again. I've been using it in its sort of most open position, but even in its most open position, you have to bear in mind it's only got a 1.2mm air hole, so it's still a fairly tight draw. So even in its most open position, if I was going to say 1 was a loose draw, 5 was a really tight draw, it's still going to be around the sort of 3, 3.5, something like that. It's still a pretty tight draw, really. So I quite like it. With regards to ease of setup, if you've used several Genesis Atomizers before, you're not going to have any problems at all setting it up. If you've never used one before, it could be a little bit tricky, mainly because sort of under the hood, as it were, there's not a great deal of room to sort of manoeuvre, so wrapping your coils can be a little bit on the tricky side. And also the actual screws sit below, there's like a lip going all the way around there, I don't know if you noticed it, and the screws are sitting below that, so it does make it a little bit tricky to attach the negative wire. But if you just loop the wire, then hook it underneath and then tighten it up, you shouldn't have any sort of problems. And what I found easiest was to just sort of wrap your coils without sort of really caring what they look like, get it all sort of secured and tightened up, and then just use your fingernails to sort of prise the coils into position, make it look a little bit more presentable. It's definitely a little bit easier that way. So if I was going to say, that 1 was a really easy setup, if I was going to say 1 was a really hard setup, 5 was a really easy setup. It's not the hardest in the world to do, but it's not the easiest either, so I'm going to put it sort of right there in the middle at 2.5. Build quality wise, it's a really nicely made atomizer. No problems with the threading or anything like that. Those the centre post, it does look to be sort of very, very thin, so I wouldn't want to sort of put too much pressure on it when you're screwing it up. I'm sure it will last, a very long time, if not forever really, as long as you're looking after it. But I wouldn't want to drop it without the top cap being on. Let's put it that way. It doesn't look very sort of substantial. But with regards to the threading, everything screws up together really nice and smoothly. Got no problems there at all. When it comes to the looks, I think it's going to be one of those ones where, you know, you either think it looks atrocious or you think it looks really, really cool. And I'm definitely in the cool camp there, because I think it's a really, really groovy looking atomiser. And it's nice that it looks a little bit different compared to the rest of the atomisers on the market, because, you know, let's face facts, probably 90% of them do look very, very similar. And this is definitely a little bit different to the norm. It'll be interesting to see what the comments are made about its looks in the YouTube video though. But for me personally, I do like it. It's got that sort of steampunk sort of vibe about it. I like the fact that it's got this slightly bulbous tank. It's like a barrel shape rather than being sort of straight up. The top cap has got quite excessive sort of cuts and grooves in it, but again, for me personally, I think it does add to the overall look of the atomiser. So in summary, it's just a very nice atomiser. It vapes great, getting plenty of flavour, plenty of vapour, plenty of throw hit. It's relatively easy to set up. You won't have any problems if you use a few Genesis atomisers before. You know, it looks really cool as well, and I've got really sort of no complaints about it whatsoever. And one really good thing, actually two really good things. One was the packaging and the sort of presentation. I know it doesn't actually affect the product itself, but for me personally, it's just something I really do appreciate. And also the other thing is the price. Now on the website it says the price is something like 1,750 Czech Republic, whatever currency they use, but in brackets it says 69 euros. And 69 euros in English money anyway, I think is around sort of £62. And when I went onto the website to check the price, I was expecting it to be around sort of £100. So I was quite pleased to see that it's going to be sort of 69 euros, which for me seems to be, you know, pretty good value for money for a very nice sort of bespoke atomiser. Okay guys, not a great deal else I can tell you. If you fancy trying one, you can either go along to the manufacturer's website at www.steamboy.cz, but I don't think they sell it there, so you might be better off going to the reseller's website at www.ati.cz. Thank you very much for watching. Also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. That's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping, see you later.